As women, we've been trained to compare ourselves to others and then make some value judgments about our own worth, depending on what we see in that comparison. And social media has definitely been a vehicle for extreme comparisons of lifestyles. And that can make us either feel really great about ourselves or really awful about ourselves, depending on how we handle that comparison process. Today's guest, Delia Perry, is here to talk to us about how we can overcome that sense of comparing ourselves to others and focus on our own greatness and really have confidence in the impact that we're making in the world with our gifts to share. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show.
Before we start this episode, I, Carrie Hummingbird,
and I, Akeem Sami,
want you to know that
you are invited.
You're invited to join Soul Nectar Tribe.
If you like what you hear on Soul Nectar Show,
you will love being in person with us in Soul Nectar Tribe.
We invite you to check it out. First 30 days is free.
Right now, go to carriehummingbird.com, KERRI, hummingbird.com/membership and sign up. We'll see you at our next tribe gathering. And now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories to that which is bigger than us, the great mystery beyond the veil, to those synchronistic moments that lead us inexorably towards a deeper understanding of ourselves and of life, and open the doors to truth and dispel all the shadows and the falsities and help us to really find ourselves and own our power. And, you know, as women, this is such a time for us to really begin to change the way we view ourselves. And we have a lot of domesticated ways, conditioned ways of looking at ourselves. And we have entire systems of belief that are based in keeping us in those understandings of ourselves as well. And so it can be really tricky trying to navigate this space to get to something true about yourself when you're in a woman's body on the planet at this time. How do you arrive at the truth of yourself? How do you arrive at your own power and your own greatness when you're surrounded by stories and myths and ideologies that all seem to point to something sort of negative about the feminine body, the feminine heart, the feminine desires? And how do you bring yourself out of that? How do you find the way to the truth without all the tampering of humanity's ideas and your ancestors' ideas and the institution's ideas, all of that stuff just getting in the way of you knowing the truth of yourself and your own greatness and your own beauty on the inside, and the power of your body, the power of your spirit, the power of your divine feminine nature, and awakening that back up again. It takes some courage to do that, because then again, you're going against all the systems that told you that, hey, you can't trust yourself, or you're this, that, or the other. I mean, it's so messy out there in the world right now today. And I find people getting caught up in those ideas and reaching out to me and saying, Carrie Hummingbird, ... And it's like, okay, I don't want to tell you this, but I'm going to have to tell you this. You're kind of caught up in an illusion right now. You're kind of caught up in some kind of human conditioning that's trying to suck you back under instead of liberate you from where you've been constrained and locked and jailed. So we're going to have a great conversation today. I'm sure it's going to reveal more about this topic because we have a wonderful guest today, Delia Perry. Welcome, Delia.
Thank you so much, Carrie. It's wonderful to be here. Such an honor.
So glad you're here. So Delia has always had a passion for motivating and encouraging others. And she was thrilled to bring her strengths to her podcast, Girls for Greatness. On her weekly podcast, Delia interviews other women who have overcome their own struggles in order to find success and fulfillment in their lives. She highlights how her guests are using their own greatness to make an impact in the world. Girls for Greatness exists to build confidence and belief in others' ability to change, grow, and live the life they were truly meant to live. And Delia is also a wife of over 22 years and a mama to 2 children and a lover of water and all things travel and laughter and good stuff. So we're going to have a great conversation with Delia. So Delia, tell me a little bit more about how you got started in your pathway to podcasting Girls for Greatness. Where do you want to begin?
Sure. Well, it's been a journey, as most things are in life. And I used to be a high school teacher, Spanish and English teacher. And when I started a family, I kind of left that career behind and kind of started dabbling in different things, and also had always had kind of a athletic fitness bent, I guess you'd say, just something I'd always enjoyed. So I kind of gravitated towards that, and for a while was doing some fitness and nutrition coaching, which I enjoyed. But the more I worked with women in my groups and doing sort of motivating type work, I was finding for them, as well as it was for me, that so much of how they moved forward had to do with their own internal thinking. And it wasn't so much, their fitness, what they were doing fitness wise or how they were eating. It was more, how can we get to the root of your thought process? Because I know for me personally, that was a huge struggle for me, my own self-esteem, my own just battle with myself. And I tried to think that it was all about, those other things, but it really wasn't. And so I kind of wanted to step away from the whole, I should say, fitness and nutrition part of it and focus on how I could be more motivating, how I could be more encouraging, how I could create something that would really encourage others to want to look within themselves and want to work on those things so that they could be living their best life. And so I kind of had the idea of the podcast, and it was just kind of a long time coming. It took a while to kind of get it off the ground, but kind of had the idea and wanted to highlight the stories of other women and how they had struggled and then overcame those struggles. And yet we're still putting good out into the world in their own unique way. And that's kind of what I went with. And just over time, networking and talking to so many different women just kind of built that rapport and built those connections. And that's kind of how the podcast started.
That's beautiful. So you said that you actually dove into your own mental loops and to find out the root cause of some of the ways that you were maybe lacking confidence or whatever else was challenging you. Can you tell us more about that? Like, what were some of those things? Because people might be sharing those exact same patterns and like get a good nugget from you.
Yeah. I was an athlete in college, and that's really where I think when my self-esteem started to take a nosedive. I, was really fortunate and blessed. I think I had a really great upbringing and had a really great experience in high school. And, that wasn't at the forefront of my struggles. Where's my self-esteem? I didn't have issues until I got to college, and that kind of started to shift. I think the more I was made to feel aware of my body and, my time as an athlete and just the training and whatnot that I did. And I just really internalized a lot of that and developed some shame around, weight gain and then weight loss. And it was like a yo-yo effect for me all through college, and just a lot of different things, struggling with comparison. And I took that into my adult life after school and into my marriage. And it really, just wreaked havoc on my own self-esteem and my own thought process. And, it was really probably only maybe, 6 years ago that I really felt like I started to dive deep into that thought process and think, well, where did this come from? And where is this stemming from? And what do I need to let go of in order to move past this and really acknowledge the fact that I'm a human being and a woman, and we're all different shapes, sizes, all of those things. And that doesn't make up who I am internally as just my whole being. It's more, it's the outside that I think we all become so fixated on, and we forget to acknowledge just the person that we are. And so that's really what I had to to really come to grips with and really come to understand. And I think a lot of it too, I don't know if you feel the same way, Carrie, but I think as we get older, hopefully we get a little bit wiser. And I feel like my thought process around all of that has really shifted. And I think a lot of that's, been because of my own internal work. But I think, there are obviously a lot of women out there that still wrestle and struggle with their own self-esteem, with feeling like they're good enough, with not fixating on the outside or worrying about, being so, and I know that's thrown in our face all the time with media and whatnot, but really coming to the point where you can have peace with yourself. And that's so much more than just the external. It's so much more than that. For me, I know it was, so much more about the internal and my own thoughts and who I was.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I would agree with you there. There is so much comparison that's out there based on external markers, right? So like, does she match the prescribed body type for beauty, right? So there's that whole conversation. And of course, that's reinforced by media, that's reinforced by television and magazines and, the images that fill our brains. And then we kind of try to replicate that on social media, which is one of the reasons I don't do frolicking pictures in the ocean, because I don't need to contribute to that sense of lack in other people. Right. That's just not something I choose integrity there. Not to say it's out of integrity for other people to do it. I'm just saying, I recognize that that's a thing and I don't want to feed that thing. So, there's that, because the comparison monster is it's been a big deal in my life. It's almost like to decide how well I'm doing, I would look out, at other teachers or other people I'm tracking and think that they're successful and see what they're doing. And then start to compare myself to how this other person's doing on social media, which that, how accurate is that actually? For me, I try to be very vulnerable and transparent on social media, but not everybody does. So some people just put the pretty picture out there. And so you never really know, is that somebody's just pretty picture, or is that their actual life transparently displayed? And so since you don't know that, how can you even compare yourself to other people? That's the whole, but it's interesting how we're programmed to want to do that, right? I feel like that's part of the conditioning that keeps women separated and at kind of competing with each other. That's part of that deep ancestral conditioning that's been passed down generation to generation.
Yeah, I agree. I think media's heightened that. Like you said, I definitely adopt much the same thinking that you do in terms of, I think, posting and just, I feel like I really try and keep my personal life more on the private side. I post things here and there, but I really don't like to be this is what I'm doing all the time. This is where I'm at, all of these things, because like you said, that's not real life. That's showing you the highlights and not, what my everyday life is like, and trying to be more vulnerable and trying to, personally for me, I know with media, and this might just be because of what I do, but I really try and think about what purpose is my post have? Is it for me, or I always try and put some spin on it that is going to benefit someone else that's reading it. Some spin that's going to either encourage them or challenge them to maybe look at something differently, or, remind them of, some truth about themselves. I just feel like for me, that's how I try and look at media. I wish more people did that. I think there's a lot of great things out there, a lot of goodness, but I think you have to challenge yourself in that in a way. And I'm not saying that because people post things about their life or their kids or anything that's bad. It's not. I love looking at those things too, but for me personally, that's just kind of been my take.
I think that, definitely my strategy around social media has changed as I've evolved, right? So when I was sharing initially, social media really picked up and got popular right as I was ending my first marriage. And that for the timing of that for me was kind of oh, here's a new family that actually cares about me. I can share things on social media and get attention and get people's love response. And support and response. And at a time when my family was disintegrating around me, at a time when I didn't have like that family unit anymore. I didn't have that safety and I was alone. And so for me, like the social media at first was all about like getting support, getting like people, like community, building tribe around people that really cared. And then it was a way to connect with people I was studying with and learning from. And then it started becoming like, as I realized, as I got clearer and I started getting on my path, I was like, oh, I'm meant to help people. I'm meant to actually do this. Then it started changing into that. And then those same questions that you just said really came to my mind. It was like, what am I posting this for? Am I posting this to get sympathy? Am I posting this to open someone's heart as like, hey, I've been where you are. Or I've been through what you've been through. Am I posting this because I want to like show look how like successful and advanced I am. So, you need to follow me. There's just so many questions involved in that. And I think the integrity thing is to realize like the more you self-heal, the more you realize like you have capacity to be present with what's needed in the space. You can take yourself out. Like you can use yourself as the example, but it's not really about you anymore. It's really about helping other people.
Totally agree. Yes. Great point. Truly.
Yeah. So it's a journey figuring that out though. And social media keeps track of all of it.
It is, right? It is. And you were saying something earlier about just the comparison part. I know you're saying.
Yeah.
And I have to say that, and I've talked to my daughter about this a lot, who's a teenager, who, they have their own world of media and she spends a lot of time scrolling Instagram and all these things. But I've just said, you got to be really careful what you are looking at all the time, because I think it really does affect our thought process. I know for myself, if I go on Instagram and I start scrolling or I find someone that I follow that, is maybe, I don't want to say celebrity status, but just doing really well. And I might start looking through all of their stuff. And it's amazing to me how my own thought process starts to shift. Like, oh my gosh, like my life sucks. Like, look at what like, look at my house, look at my clothes, look at, and it's the comparison. It kicks in. And I just think that's something that we, a lot of times just don't take the time to acknowledge and realize. We're just kind of blind to it all. And it's like we're on autopilot. And that's easy to do, right? When you're scrolling or when you're doing all these other things. But yeah, I just wanted to say that that's something I've had to catch myself with.
You got to be clear with your intentions when you're going to scroll and look at that's what I've also realized. We can make a whole lot of assumptions about where other people are. And then we're taken out of the mystery of our own path. When we just compare ourselves to other people or think that there's like, okay, somehow I'm going to reach these milestones. Like this person's showing me the milestones that eventually I'm going to reach, so I'm going to look at their stuff and like compare myself and go, okay, they're at this milestone. So like, then my brain wants to figure it all out. Like, how do I get at that milestone? And how do I, what things are they doing? And so then I got to do those things. And then I'm going to get to that milestone where I have like the 1,000 likes or whatever the thing is, right? The 50,000 likes or the, like you can compare a lot. And what I've started realizing is that doing that comparison work takes you out of the mystery of your own journey. Like how life is showing up for you and how it's meant to show up for you. And one of the messages I've gotten a lot from White Eagle, who, is I channel in the Second Wave book, is that he's like, influence is different than fame. Influence is influencing things, but you might not ever get acknowledged for the influencing that you're doing by the holding of the space that you're holding. And you may never know like how many people you're affecting by what you're doing. So influence isn't about taking credit. And in a way, social media with the fame aspect of it, like the 50,000 likes and all that that's really like a subtle way of taking credit. There's nothing wrong. They're not doing anything wrong. But it is that subtle like validation that what they're doing is making a difference, right? So they have this like overt acknowledgement that, yeah, you're making a difference. Look how many people like what you said. But there's another level deeper where sometimes the work that you're doing in the world is at a level that, your soul doesn't require validation to know that that's working, right? And so your soul is like, I don't need validation for that. I'm just doing the work I'm here to do. People show up to me that need me through means that I wouldn't even know. And they just show up and I have the conversations I need to have. And it's not about likes and shares and all of that. Although we always ask you guys to like and share. So please do.
We do.
But my soul knows that that's not actually like, there's something more profound happening is what I guess what I'm getting at. And if you can just drop, this is what I encourage myself to do, because I'll see that and I'll get triggered by it. I'll be like, man, I'm not doing my work or something. And then my guides will say, no, you are. You're doing everything you need to do. You're fine. And my mind couldn't understand that disparity between influence and fame, So what's your thoughts about that?
No, I agree. I think it comes back to intention for sure. I think when I started, I was more in tune with the numbers thing, but I have really shifted away from that. I mean, I can't even tell you at any given time, where I'm at in terms of followers or this or that. And I've never judged the influence of my podcast either on the number of downloads. I mean, that's a huge thing as a podcaster, right? You definitely want to get the word out. And I'm not saying that that's not obviously a goal to want to improve that and, have more people listen to your show. But I've really tried to approach, podcasting and just what I'm trying to do in my community as what I'm doing is speaking to someone and it's meaningful to someone and someone moves forward in their life or feels encouraged or whatever that is, then that's a win. That's a win. And that's why I'm doing it. I didn't do it for finances. I didn't do it for fame or to be on stage or to be, at some level. It was just something in my own heart that I felt led to do. And that's why I've continued to do it. That's not what drives me. So my motivation, might be a little bit different than someone else's. Not to say that any of those other things I listed is a bad motivator, but that's just kind of been my own personal thought process.
Yeah. And so what this really speaks to for anybody who's, a podcaster, you're totally with us and listening going, yeah, I totally like this conversation. If your purpose is something else, this still applies, this question of like my why, like, why am I doing the thing I'm doing? Would I do it if I didn't get paid? Mm-hmm. And my answer is yes. Cause the podcast, I don't, it's an expense. Yeah. It's not an income provider at this point, but I do it because I like having the conversations. I love the people that I meet, like Delia. Like I love having these conversations and get to meet people like that are willing to put their voices out there.
Yes.
I love the idea that something that gets said on this podcast opens a person's heart who's listening, so that you all that are listening, I love this idea that it opens your heart and that it gives you this new idea and that it opens a perspective and that it helps you maybe resolve some sticky situation in your life. And then it's more beneficial and more beautiful. Like that is very fulfilling for me, that idea. And I always wish I heard from more people. Like that's the only thing is like, it seems like a one-way street. Like we're just having this conversation, but I hardly ever get feedback from people about episodes. And I would love to hear more about the impact it makes for people because that's like very fulfilling, right? Delia, like you said, you had some great feedback on my episode on your podcast because people reached out to you and were like, hey, whatever they said. But, that's nice to hear, it's nice to hear that people are engaging with it and getting something.
Right.
From it.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be nice to have more. I always encourage people too, like, let me know what resonated with you and what didn't. I mean, wouldn't care if someone was like, I think, you're full of crap and I didn't understand what you said at all, but it'd be fine with me. I mean, at least it would be feedback, right? I mean, I know that. And that's another thing I think you have to realize when you're in this kind of space, whatever it is that you're doing, I think in life, you're serving in some way or you're putting something out into the world, is that it's not for everyone. Not everyone is going to agree or not everyone is going to like what you have to say or like your show. Or, I mean, I have plenty of other podcasts that I listen to that didn't really resonate with me. So I, don't listen to them, but that's okay. I mean, everybody has their own voice. And I think that's what's, really important in this world that I hope people, really start to understand is that, your voice and what's important to you and your gifts and what you have to offer is really what's important here. It's not, just understanding that it's what you do is unique to you and no one can do whatever you're going to do the way you can do it. So don't shy away from whatever it is you feel led to do.
Well, and I feel like that's actually a big part of this conversation about girls for greatness and, the rise of the feminine is the encouragement, certainly, and not to exclude men from this, but the encouragement for women, especially, to lift your voices, because they're breaking an ancestral pattern to stay quiet. I mean, there's so much programming in the collective that encourages you to stay quiet. And almost like that competition game is also part of that whole matrix. Like, well, I don't really have I don't have 10,000 likes. So I shouldn't really speak up about this because I don't have a whole 10,000 people saying I should say this. Right. So, there's like that comparison competition matrix also can make women want to not speak up because, well, I don't know that people will agree with me. But see, that's the point.
Right.
I mean, you got to do it before anybody you got to do it despite anyone else's opinion. I definitely have people from time to time that reach out to me and they love me and they're very concerned about me and they think I've gone astray and I'm, all this kind of stuff. They get wrapped up in some kind of ideology. And it's like, actually, I'm being me, and I think it's courageous to just be yourself. To be yourself and to explore and even allow yourself to transform your ideas about things, but to show up with the most true heart that you can show up to that microphone and speak it from your heart and be in that moment and allow everyone who resonates with that to be with it and allow everyone who doesn't resonate to, use it as your own learning. Right?
Yeah.
But, without attachment, use your voice.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. Yes.
It's hard for women to speak up. Talk a little bit about what were some of the things that you went through when you were getting ready to start your podcast? What were some of the fears that you went through when using your voice?
It was many. I think it was just feeling is this going to sound right? Am I going to ask the right questions? How is the flow of conversation? It was just worry about how things were going to sound. And I didn't do video the first couple of seasons, just because I felt for myself, I needed to listen as intently as I could without having to look at anything to really hear what someone was saying and respond the way I would want to respond. And I haven't gone back and listened to some of those earlier episodes in a while, but I was actually just thinking about that this morning and just can, remember how nerve-wracked I was to, those first couple episodes to just not stutter or stop or, all of the things that go along with speaking. And I've, obviously, become more comfortable with all of that. But the speaking part is interesting. It's something I never wanted to do in high school and college. I mean, teaching was one thing because I had my students and I felt comfortable in front of that age group. But if put me in front of other adults and peers, or whether I was in school, I absolutely hated it, shied away from it, never took a speech class in my life, never wanted to, any of that. And yet I know here I am, hosting a podcast and speaking more than I probably ever have in my life. But I think comes with, experience and confidence, but also I think when you feel led that there's something inside you that needs to be said or something that you can offer and give, that's a motivating thing. That's motivated me enough to step outside that comfort zone and do something different.
And for me with this stepping outside the comfort zone has been also because topics come up that then in the moment you have to decide, what are you going to share and what are you not going to share? What are you going to talk about and what are you not going to talk about? And that always leads me to this question of, where's my loyalty? Right. And so say my family comes up, then it's where's my loyalty? Okay. So I have something really important I need to share. I'm in the conversation and how can I balance that need for purpose with the need to share something that would really open some hearts, with the need to not alienate my family? Is I don't want all of our stuff all over, the airwaves. And I haven't always navigated that gracefully. Have you had to navigate that up until now? And then how have you made that choice?
As far as just explain that to me.
Talking about things that involve family.
Yeah, I get it.
Because you're a person and you have, a lot of the part of being a woman in Girls for Greatness has got to be navigating that relationship.
Yeah, for sure. I have been. It's taken me a while. I'll say definitely in those first couple of seasons, I probably shied away from getting super, super personal or talking more about my own struggles. I started doing solo casts every now and then, I think maybe in my second season. And so that's really where I feel like I've maybe addressed some of my own struggles and what I've been challenged with, and even my relationships with, my spouse or, my kids. I think, there's like a fine line, but I feel like it's definitely good for people to understand too, that, I might be doing something that's motivating, inspiring others, and encouraging, but I still have my own hangups and habits and things that I'm working on all of the time. I just don't use that as an excuse to not do what I do. I think that's one of the things I really try and want people to understand in life is that we all have struggles. We all have things we wrestle with, whatever you want to look at, but we can't use that as a reason to not give back whatever we've been given in terms of our own greatness or our own gifts or our own talents. In other words, you don't have to wait until you have it all figured out or you have it all together, because you're probably not going to have it all together. I mean, I know I don't. I mean, I still have so much to work on, so much to learn. And I just think that's really important for people to understand. I think we hold ourselves back from doing or becoming because we feel like, well, I'm not worthy yet because I don't have it all together, or I still have this one thing that I struggle with. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is super challenging. That decision, what to share and what not to share. And it challenges, for me, I call it like challenging my inner narcissist, because like my inner narcissist wants like the happy Christmas pictures. Like, look, my family is awesome. Like we're all together and everybody gets along. And, that's what that part of me wants, wants to put that picture out into the world and like have shiny, beautiful pictures on social media and have beautiful, shiny stories. And it's not that way all the time. And I would be denying people the richness, the total richness of the experience I've gone through with my mom, for example, by not sharing some of the ups and downs. And like people that have been listening to me for years, they've been on the journey with me. It's like, wow, I thought you'd never speak to your mom again. I thought that was done. I thought your mom would like never open her heart again to you. And then all of a sudden to have that happen, it's like it happens for all the people that are listening. It happens for as well as me. So it's like a bonus, and then my mom is like delightful, because things have totally shifted because I shifted myself. So I like to bring people on the journey with me, and my family hasn't always understood that. Like they, from time to time, get a little like, hey, you're telling that story and I'm not comfortable with that story, or,
right.
Because they're confronting their own inner narcissist. Like I want to be perfect,
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah, but isn't the imperfection so much more delightful? In many ways.
It is. It is. I think I'm reaching out, or I shouldn't say reaching out, but I'm more vocal about my struggles as of late. I'd say just even in the last year, in sharing, just because I want people to understand that, they're not alone. And, that just because I have these challenges and things that I struggle with, it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, or, what I mean? I just think a lot of times we base our worthiness and, we do so much self-judgment of ourselves all the time for parenting or some other mistake we made, or, whatever it is in life. And so I think it's really important to keep that perspective. I just, especially, and I know we talked about this on my show, was, the parenting part and, how tough it is with teenagers, especially now. I have, a daughter and a son, and there's a lot of days where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I suck. Like I cannot get this right. And, it's just the season.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how you get it right with teenagers. I mean, they're kind of their own.
I know. Right.
Their own soup. I mean, they're kind of dismantling everything and putting it all back together. Yeah. And so, it's pretty messy. And you just have to hold space for that. But I feel like, I've definitely used some of those moments to share with other parents, because parents, we can put ourselves through the ringer. Like we really can tear ourselves up over some of these things that, maybe not be such a disaster that we thought they were. It could take a little while to figure that out. But if we don't talk about it, because nobody else is talking about it, Like everyone's
So
afraid
true.
to tell anybody else because they don't want to be called out as like a bad parent or a bad this or bad that.
Right.
You keep it all to yourself, and then your throat chakra is completely blocked. And so part of the thing I love right now on the planet is how like people like you and me and other, so many other hosts that I've met are just like, we're just getting out there. We're just talking, we're sharing, we're talking. Yeah, we might make a mess here or there. We might like step over a boundary with somebody we love, but we're at least making an effort to like end the silence, and end the illusion of like some perfection that other people have attained and we haven't gotten, and we have to be ashamed of ourselves. It's like, no, like everybody has got their stuff. And anybody who's even spiritual teachers who say they don't have their stuff, I can tell you they're full of crap. Everybody has their stuff.
Right.
No, everybody.
Right.
And some people might be better at hiding it, but that's it. They all have their stuff.
I agree. Totally. 100%.
Yeah. So, we're doing this together. We're all on the journey. We're all walking home together.
I agree.
Well, awesome. So tell me, how do people get started with you? If they want to get to know you, I mean, obviously I can put a link to the Girls for Greatness site, but what
the Girls for Greatness site, Instagram under Girls for Greatness, or over on social media. You can look under my name, Delia Perry, or Girls for Greatness is over there too. I have an online group called In It Together. It's just a private community of women who are just all about bettering themselves. Just go there and request to join. And yeah, it's a great group of women. And I really try and post many different things to that page itself. So a lot of that content is not available to anyone else unless they're in that group. So that's really been special and really unique. And so that's another great way to kind of connect.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for all the work that you do in the world and for coming on and sharing a conversation with me on Soul Nectar Show over here. And I'll put a link back to your podcast, to the episode that we did together. So if anybody who's listening, if you want to go check out that conversation and find out both sides of me and Delia, you can do that.
Yeah, it was great.
I'll put links to all your handles and everything. So I want to ask a favor, of course. I always ask a favor at this point in the conversation.
Sure.
Everybody, can you please like and share out this episode? Because those internet search engines, they really do rely on us to be proactive and engaged in order to get the messages out there. And I would really love to hear what you thought, because I don't often get comments back. I don't often get feedback on the episodes. And so I would love to hear your thoughts and what you got from it and how it's going to inspire you to move forward. So please share, either email us back or put a comment on YouTube or wherever you found it, and let us know. Let us know what you thought, because we're listening. We're curious, right, Delia?
That'd be awesome. Yes. Thank you so much, Carrie. It's been so fun talking with you again. I just love what you're doing and so appreciate your work in the world, and had so much fun having you on my show. So if you guys haven't listened to that, please take a listen, because she's an extraordinary woman, as y'all know.
Thank you so much, Delia. Okay, so we're going to give kisses. Let's give kisses, everybody. We love you all, and we'll see you next time. And here are your kisses on the way out.
Love it.
Love you. You have all been blessed with kisses. See you next time on Soul Nectar Show. Bye for now.
If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. To dive in deeper to nourishing conversation, visit soulnectar.show.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken the Show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar from the source of who you